Sean Connery opened his eyes on October 31st, 2020, in his bedroom in the Bahamas, and asked his wife a question that would shatter her. "Who are you?" Micheline Roquebrune, the woman he'd been married to for 45 years, stared at the man who had once been the most recognized face on the planet. This time, he wasn't joking. The greatest secret agent in cinema history had lost the one battle that mattered, the battle for his own mind. But to understand how devastating this moment was, you need to go back, not to James Bond, not to the fame, to a two-room apartment in Edinburgh, Scotland, where a boy named Thomas Sean Connery slept in a drawer because his parents couldn't afford a crib. This was 1930. The Great Depression was crushing Scotland. Sean's father delivered furniture, his mother cleaned houses. They had nothing. At 13, Sean quit school to help feed the family. He delivered milk at 4 a.m., 8 shillings a week. By 16, he was working any job he could find. Coffin polisher, truck driver, he even posed nude for art students. 8 shillings an hour for standing naked in a freezing room. When you're hungry, dignity is a luxury you can't afford. But Sean had something most people didn't: a presence. When he walked into a room, people noticed. He didn't know what to do with it yet. He was just a poor kid trying to survive. Then, in 1953, something happened that would change everything. A friend dragged him to an audition for South Pacific. Sean had never acted, never wanted to, but it paid better than the milk truck. He got the part, not because he could sing or dance. He couldn't, but because when he walked on stage, you couldn't look away. During that tour, Sean started watching the lead actors, how they moved, how they commanded attention. Something clicked. When the tour ended, he didn't go back to Edinburgh. He stayed in London and started auditioning for everything. For 8 years, Sean ground it out. Small films nobody remembers. Stage shows that closed after a week. What separated Sean was his intensity. When he looked at you, it felt like he could see through you. Directors noticed, but nobody knew what to do with it. Until 1961, two producers, Albert Broccoli and Harry Saltzman, were casting a spy film called Dr. No. They'd been rejected by everyone. They were desperate. Someone mentioned Sean Connery. They were skeptical. He was Scottish, not English. His accent was thick, but they brought him in anyway. Sean showed up in a brown suit that didn't fit, unshaved, hair a mess. He looked nothing like James Bond. But then he walked, not walked, prowled, like a predator. Broccoli later said, "That walk sold me. He moved like a jungle cat." That was Bond. They offered him £7,000 for 3 films. Garbage money. But more than Sean had ever seen. He signed. What he didn't know was that he'd just signed away his identity. Dr. No, released in October 1962. It was a phenomenon. From Russia with Love came next. Then Goldfinger, each bigger than the last. Sean Connery was now one of the most famous men alive. The kid who'd slept in a drawer was staying in 5-star hotels. But something was wrong. Sean wasn't Sean anymore. He was Bond. Everywhere. People called him Bond. Interviewers asked what Bond would do. Sean Connery, the person, had ceased to exist. And with every film, he started to hate Bond more. By Thunderball in 1965, Sean was drinking heavily. Not socially. Seriously. He'd finish shooting and go straight to his trailer. Scotch. Then more scotch. His marriage to Diane Cilento was collapsing. She later wrote that living with Sean during the Bond years was like living with a ghost. He was there physically, but mentally he was somewhere else, somewhere dark. The studio wanted more films. The fans demanded more. But Sean felt trapped. He was making pennies while the films generated hundreds of millions. Worse, he couldn't get other roles. Directors saw Bond. They couldn't separate the actor from the character. There's a story from You Only Live Twice that Sean never talked about. They were filming in Japan. A crew member found him walking the streets of Tokyo at 3 a.m. When they asked where he was going, Sean said, "Away. I'm trying to walk away." But he couldn't. Bond followed him everywhere. In 1967, after You Only Live Twice, Sean did something shocking. He quit, told the producers he was done. They offered more money. He refused. They mentioned his contract. He told them to sue him. James Bond was killing Sean Connery. The press destroyed him, called him ungrateful, arrogant. But Sean didn't care. For the first time in 5 years, he could breathe. Sean took challenging roles, the Molly Maguires, the Red Tent, the Anderson tapes. Critics praised his range, but audiences didn't show up. They wanted Bond. The rejection devastated him. He'd proven he could do more. Nobody cared. Then in 1971, the producers came back. Diamonds Are Forever. They offered $1.2 million. Plus, they'd finance 2 films of his choice. Sean hated the idea, but the money was too good. Diamonds Are Forever was miserable. Sean was older, heavier. He wore a hairpiece. He felt like a fraud. But he got through it. Took the money, donated most to Scottish education, and swore he was done forever. For the next decade, Sean rebuilt carefully. The man who would be king, a bridge too far. He was playing characters, not icons. And slowly, Sean Connery started to feel like himself again. Then came 1987, The Untouchables. Sean played Jimmy Malone, a tough Irish cop. It was a supporting role, but Sean made it legendary. Sean Connery won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. At 57 years old, he finally won an Oscar. Not for Bond, for being a great actor. When he accepted, he was brief. Thanked the director and cast. Then walked off stage. Just quiet acknowledgement. The 1990s were his renaissance. Indiana Jones, The Hunt for Red October, The Rock. He was finally comfortable. Finally free from Bond's shadow. In 1998, he was knighted. Sir Sean Connery. The kid from Edinburgh who'd slept in a drawer was now a knight. He donated millions to Scottish causes. Never forgot where he came from. But around 2003, people close to Sean started noticing things. Forgotten names, repeated stories. Nothing major. But Micheline, his wife since 1975, she noticed patterns. Sean announced his retirement in 2006, said he was tired of Hollywood idiots. Most people believed him. He was 76. He'd earned retirement. But the truth was darker. Sean was struggling with his memory. His last film, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen in 2003, had been a nightmare. He couldn't remember dialogue. He knew something was wrong. But Sean Connery didn't do weakness. So he retired. Told everyone it was his choice, because he wasn't going to let anyone see him fail. For a few years, it worked. He and Micheline lived in the Bahamas. But Micheline watched carefully. The way he'd pause mid-sentence, the way he'd ask the same question twice, the confusion about dates. In 2010, Micheline convinced Sean to see a doctor. After testing, the diagnosis came. Dementia, early stage, progressing, no cure, no treatment to stop it. Sean took the news stoically, didn't cry, didn't rage, just nodded and asked how long he had. The doctor couldn't say. maybe 5 years, maybe 10. Sean made a decision that day. He wasn't going to become a spectacle. No interviews, no public appearances, no photographs. He was going to disappear. For the next decade, Sean Connery vanished from public life, occasional paparazzi photos from a distance, but no interviews, nothing. Behind closed doors, Micheline watched the man she loved slowly disappear. The decline was gradual at first. Then it accelerated. By 2015, Sean often didn't recognize his own son. By 2018, there were days he didn't recognize Micheline. She'd walk into their bedroom and Sean would look at her with confusion. "Who are you?" And every time, Micheline would smile and say, "I'm your wife. I'm Micheline. I love you." Sometimes he'd nod, sometimes he wouldn't. But she said it anyway. The worst part was the moments of clarity. Sean would suddenly come back, fully present, and in those moments, he knew. He'd look at Micheline with tears and say, "I'm losing myself. I can feel it slipping away." Then the fog would return. There was one incident in 2019 that Micheline never forgot. They were sitting on their terrace. Sean was having a good day. They were talking about old times. Sean was laughing, telling stories. Then, mid-sentence, he stopped. He looked at Micheline with an expression she'd never seen before. Terror. "I can't remember," he said quietly. "It was right there, and now it's gone." He started to cry. Sean Connery, the man who'd played the toughest characters in cinema, was crying because he couldn't remember what he'd been saying. Micheline held him. "It's okay," she whispered. But it wasn't okay, and they both knew it. James Bond had faced countless villains, but Sean Connery's real enemy was his own mind. And unlike Bond, Sean couldn't punch his way out. He could only endure it. By 2020, Sean was mostly nonverbal. He'd sit in his chair by the window. Micheline would hold his hand and talk to him about their life together. She didn't know if he understood, but she talked anyway. October 31st, 2020, Sean Connery's final morning. He woke up around 7 a.m. Micheline was there, like always. She helped him sit up. "Who are you?" he asked. She'd heard this question 1,000 times, but this time felt different. Micheline took his hand. "I'm your wife. I'm Micheline. I love you." Sean looked at her for a long moment. Then something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, maybe. He squeezed her hand, gently. Then he smiled, a small smile. "Thank you," he whispered, his last words. Then he closed his eyes and lay back down. His breathing was different, slower. At 1:30 p.m., Sean Connery took his last breath, quietly, peacefully. Micheline was still holding his hand. The news broke the next day. Sir Sean Connery dies at 90. The world mourned. Tributes poured in. Everyone remembered James Bond. Everyone celebrated 007. But very few knew the truth, that for the last decade, Sean Connery had been fighting a battle nobody saw. A battle he fought with dignity, even when he couldn't remember why. Micheline gave one interview after his death, just one. She was asked if Sean had been happy at the end. She thought for a long moment. "I don't know if happy is the right word, but he was at peace. He'd spent his whole life fighting. At the end, he finally stopped fighting. And maybe that's its own kind of peace." The interviewer asked what she wanted people to remember about Sean. Not Bond. Sean. Micheline smiled sadly. "I want them to remember that he was human. He wasn't invincible. He struggled, he hurt, he lost battles. But he never stopped trying to be better. That's the Sean I loved. That's the Sean the world never really knew." The man who'd played the world's greatest spy lost his final battle in a quiet bedroom in the Bahamas. No dramatic music, no clever one-liners, just silence. And Micheline holding his hand. Micheline scattered his ashes in Scotland and the Bahamas. She didn't hold a public funeral. Sean wouldn't have wanted that. But sometimes, late at night, Micheline watches one of his films. Not Bond, never Bond, but The Man Who Would Be King, or Finding Forrester. Films where you can see Sean, not the character, where his eyes sparkle with intelligence, where he's fully alive. And she remembers. The boy from Edinburgh who refused to stay down, the actor who fought to be taken seriously, the man who loved her for 45 years. That's the Sean Connery she remembers. That's the Sean Connery the world never really knew. James Bond never lost. The character is immortal. But Sean Connery was mortal. And in the end, he lost his memory. He lost his identity. He lost himself. And maybe that's the most human thing about him. Behind the tuxedos and the martinis, there was just a man. A man who fought harder than any character he ever played. A man who faced his final enemy with courage, even when that enemy was his own mind. That's the real Sean Connery, not the legend, not the icon. Just a man who happened to play the world's most famous spy, and who paid a price for it that nobody saw, until it was too late.